Can you also mute yourself, please?
Yeah.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Looks good. People are still joining, but I think we can go ahead and get started real quick. Well, thank you everyone for coming. My name is Yanni Maestas, and I am a project manager with the New Mexico Abandoned Mineland Program. And this meeting is to just kind of, for the RFP that we're putting out for the New Mexico AML program. And it's for as needed professional engineering services for abandoned minelands. Like again, I said, people are still joining. So let's just get started. Yeah. For those of you that are barely joining, we are using the chat function to record your attendance. So if you haven't done so already, please use the chat function to record your name, title, company, address, email, and telephone number in the chat. Just as an FYI to everyone, this meeting is being recorded. Okay.
Shall we get started or?
Yeah. So just real quick, again, my name is Yanni Maestas, and I'm a project manager with the New Mexico Abandoned Mineland Program. However, the procurement specialist for this RFP is Martin Kuziel from the New Mexico Purchasing Division. Right.
Facilities management.
Facility management division. Yes.
Thank you. Okay. If you guys want to take it from here.
Sure. This is Marty Parents-Dahlman, and Martin and I are responsible for this RFP. Martin is the main procurement manager. He's the contact I'm the person behind the scenes that pretty much helped write this thing. So we're going to go briefly through the RFP, the nuts and bolts of it, and then we'll get into all the scope of work, and we'll hand it back over to MNerd for that. So we released it on April 27th. Proposals are due June 15th at 4 o'clock, and they're due via email to Martin. And of course, this is the mandatory pre-proposal virtual meeting. So here's the purpose. We want basically they want a stable of engineering services from firms or individuals for the reclamation and safeguarding of the abandoned mine sites throughout New Mexico on an as-needed basis. I gotta get my tongue working right here. Okay, so the successful firms, and there will be, or individuals, there will be multiples, shall work with them, with the AML personnel, or through an independent contractor or a combination thereof. So you could end up being a sub to somebody, or you could end up being a prime on this. And it's basically professional engineering services to help protect public health, safety, and property from adverse effects of historic mining practices and restore the land. Background. Okay. So each professional, whoever gets awarded this will end up in a professional services contract agreement with MNerd. And that contract total over the whole term of it for all the projects put together shall not exceed $650,000. We have definitions. Here's the contact info for Martin as procurement manager. And all inquiries, requests, any kind of questions have to go through him. And here's our sequence of events, basically. We'll try to keep to this schedule. Sometimes when you get down in here with the contracts, things happen and they drag out. So basically, after today, you'll be facing a deadline of May 26th for submitting any questions to Martin, and then we will be issuing amendments, probably one pretty soon after the meeting, and then the last one would be on June 2nd. And the proposals again are due June 15th. So the committee will meet shortly. Gosh. Well, they're not going to meet on June 6th. Anyway, they'll meet through like towards the end of the month, select the finalists by June 30th, and they'll be notifying people early July and finalize the contracts mid-July, mid to the end of July. And it does depend on DFA approval and also state purchasing, the contracts bureau over there is a signatory as well. We are using acknowledgement of receipt forms. That's Appendix A. So if you're interested in proposing on this RFP, you need to email that to Martin. And today is the deadline at 3 o'clock. Here's our pre-proposal. Okay. We basically have an error here. This paragraph is going to end up being deleted because we are submitting proposals purely by email, and you do not have to send a hard copy in to the procurement manager in a package, or we will not accept any by fax, and we will by email. So this paragraph is going to be deleted in the First Amendment. If you have any questions, just go ahead and ask.
Martha, real quick, this is Jason Andrews, Engineering Analytics. On that Appendix A, we emailed that over to Martin for acknowledgement of receipt. Will he reply back saying he's received that, or how do we confirm receipt of that?
Yes, I've done that. Typically, I'll send back a received receipt.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question. That was good. All right, and this basically says you've got to submit them to Martin. Don't wait till the last minute, because at 4 o'clock sometimes there's a bit of a gap between you pressing send and us getting it. So especially if it's a larger email. So we're going to keep track of all the proposals, when they came in, the date and the time of them. And you can only submit one proposal in response to this RFP.
I have a question, Richard Rato with AECom. When you say submit one, I assume that means you cannot be a sub on one team and a prime on as well at the same time.
I had just thought about that. I'm glad you asked. I would assume that you can. Yenny, do you have any objection to that?
I would have to check with our legal, but I can take note and make that question in the Q&A First Amendment.
Okay.
And this is Deborah Hicks with Pettigrew Associates. Similar question. Then we only need to submit one if we're going for both the both types of services that are asked for.
Correct.
Thank you.
But Yenny, do you want to take notes on the questions that come up?
Yes, I am. And
Okay.
if you guys also want to type up in the chat, we'll have a an opportunity at the end, but hopefully we won't miss anything since the meeting is being recorded.
Okay, thank you. All right. Here's the organization of how the proposal should be sent in. So actually this D should be indented, so it's D1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then EF, GH. So if an offeror doesn't possess the in-house capabilities to perform a component of the scope of work, the response should demonstrate their ability to prepare and administer a subcontract or to work jointly with another firm to accomplish that component. Any work performed under a subcontract, joint venture, partnership, or other joint undertaking with another firm must comply with state procurement code procedures and their contracting requirements. But basically it's, if you have sub-consultants or sub-people under your prime contract, that's fine. You just need to basically tell us that you're able to do that. So the technical specs deal with the type of work that you're responsible for, the detailed scope of work. So there's 1, 2, 3. Yenny, help me out here. How many
Yes.
scopes? 3 scopes that you can
Yes.
apply for, that are basically categories.
Correct, and I believe there's an appendix that you have to point out which ones you're submitting for.
Right. And so for any of those categories, you're responsible, need to be able to do all of this, whether it's you or one of your subcontractors. Same with the basic services, I'm assuming.
Yeah, we'll go over in more detail in a little bit, in a couple of slides.
Good, then I'm gonna skip right past all
Yeah.
this. Thank you. All right. Here are the basic points awarded per factor. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 factors. And these down here are all pass fail. So for each of the factors, we're giving you a description of what we want to see in your proposal. You got to describe your design experience, technical competence, types of services, things like that. So pay careful attention to each of these items. That's how the committee will score your proposal. Same with this one, capability and capacity. Pay attention to all the bullets. Record of past performance. Proximity and familiarity. I think we'd be able to, you need to prove to us that you worked around the whole area, basically, or just show us what areas you're very familiar with. Volume of work. The reason for this factor, and this is a negative factor, well, actually it's 5 points. So it's going from 0 to 5. Is that if you've got a lot of work already with us, you kind of have an advantage, and we'd like to spread the work around. And so you're not gonna earn many points on this if you've already got a lot of work with us. So that's the rationale behind it. And it is in statute that we have to do this as a factor. Okay, the business eval, this appendix B, the letter of transmittal, it must be filled out, and you cannot leave any of these blank, or technically you would be you would fail this letter of transmittal review. So please, if it's not applicable, put that. We'll look at the form in a minute, but basically don't leave anything blank. So if you have any response to the terms and conditions of the contract that's going to be issued, you need to let us know, because if otherwise we're going to assume that you're fine with it, and your attorneys aren't going to object to anything. So you need to do one of the two. You either on a letterhead say, I agree to the terms and conditions, or on that letterhead you say, here's the ones I'm having problems with, and I would prefer this other language instead, or delete this instead. So, any questions on that?
There's a person on the chat saying they can't hear. I don't think that's on any issue on our end.
Okay, I'll try to speak up also. Get closer to my computer. Then there's a campaign contribution form, that project listing form, and an insurance certificate. Any questions on these pass fails? Okay. During the evaluation process, Martin is the only one that's able to reach out to an offeror to clarify anything if we have questions. We can use the selection committee, I'm not on it, can use other sources of information to perform the evaluation. And basically we're going to assign a point value, and the ones with the highest scores will be offered contracts. And there's also a caveat. The caveat, though, the offerers with the most advantageous proposal to the state will be offered a contract. But generally, if you have the most points, you are the most advantageous. Right, let's look at the forms. This is the one you should turn in by 3 o'clock today. And the reason for it is so that we can send everybody the amendments when they come out. Here's a letter of transmittal. The thing that trips up, I don't know what this is.
I have a quick regarding the
Alex?
amendment. Hi, this is
Yeah.
Kim Billington with Engineering Analytics. Will those amendments also be posted on the General Service Department site where the RFP was released?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Emner, don't you have a site that where you're posting this to?
Yes, it'll also be posted on our EMNRD website, but to answer your question, the SAM.gov, it's we'll go over it in a little bit.
Oh, good, okay.
Before we move on from this topic, the question was, were the amendments going to be posted on the General Services Department website? And I'm not absolutely positive where that would be.
Right, me neither.
So I would defer to the EMNRD website for the most up-to-date information.
Right. State purchasing has two websites. One's a public one that everybody looks at, and they were objecting to publishing it on that. And I don't know if it ever did get on there or not. Their other website is for their registered vendors. And so you'd have to go in and register. And it's a good thing to do because then you get notified of any solicitations under your specific commodity code or the services that you provide. So I think that's where it would be posted with state purchasing, but if you're not in their system, then you won't be able to see it. So that's correct. I think MNERD is a safer place to look.
And we will, for those of you who submit Appendix A, you will be notified accordingly and pointed in the right direction.
Right.
And I've also just included the link to the MNERD website in the chat, Marty.
Oh, good. Thank you. All right, be sure to fill out all these little boxes. Use of subcontractors. If you're going to use subcontractors, you can put a check mark here and you can just list them here or attach an extra sheet. If you aren't going to do subcontractors, be sure and check that box. This is the one that trips everybody up. It's number 4. Do not leave it blank. Just put NA, none, or doesn't apply or anything if that's the case. And then, of course, sign it and date it. Okay, so I don't want to see anybody thrown out just because they didn't do number 4 correctly. Here are the categories. Any comments on this one, Yenny, on this page?
No, other than, you use this as the way to tell us which services you are putting in a proposal for.
You can have multiple.
You can have multiple, yes. If you can put in for one, or you can put in for all 3.
Okay, this is the normal campaign contribution disclosure form. If you have multiple people in your organization that are making contributions, you can copy this and send in multiples. Here's the project listing form. So this would be any contracts that you've been awarded, the award date, contract date, the amount, and how complete you are as of the date that these proposals are due. And if it's less than 75%, that's where we start taking off points from the 5 points.
Richard Rato with AECom. I have one question on that form. Is that for ENMRD projects only, or is this for all projects in the state?
It's just for MNERD ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because GSD has some contracts with some of you. Oh. Okay, and here's the sample contract. Through it, see if you have an indemnity clause. Does not look like it, so that's good. So we have to get the Contracts Review Bureau to sign it. DFA has to see it, so all kinds of people have to sign it. That's what takes a bit of time. And Tax and Rev, they'll be looking at your tax records to make sure there's no issues. That's it. Okay. Any questions on the RFP? Okay, I'm going to turn this, if I can figure this out, turn this back to you, Yenny, or do you want to just take control?
Yeah, I'll take over. Can you
Thank
guys see
you.
my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, just so we can reiterate everything that Marty just talked about. Thank you, Marty. We're just gonna go over again real briefly again. The procurement specialist for this RFP is going to be Martin Kuziel. It's not gonna be anyone from EMNRD. It's not gonna be anyone from the AML program. It's all questions, all submittals, everything is gonna go to Martin. Okay. And again, this RFP is for as needed services. That means that work is not guaranteed. It is based on the needs of the AMA program for the next 4 years. The maximum amount for each contract is going to be 650,000, but the AMA program reserves the right to award any amount under 650,000, as we seem fit for the program. So we don't have a set amount of contracts that we are going to award, but we're thinking anywhere between 4 and 8. And again, just to reiterate, not all of the contracts will be for the maximum amount. And again, we do have a work projection for the next 4 years, but the AML program issues come up unexpectedly, and the priorities of the program change. Okay, don't forget to submit Appendix 8 at the end of the day if you wanna receive notifications for any amendments and questions and answers. Okay, mark your calendars because the proposals are due Thursday, June 15th at 4 p.m. So it's about a month from today. Again, our proposals are going to be submitted to Martin Kuziel from Facilities Management Division. And everything is going to be submitted electronically via email. We do have a maximum size of 20 megabytes. And I believe Martin is going to be acknowledging receipt of your proposal as they come in, just to make sure that they went through. And if you send a proposal and you don't receive an email from Martin saying, hey, I got your proposal, you can check back in with him and say, and figure out, how to make it get to him.
I have a question. If the proposal's over 20 meg, can they submit 2 packages?
Yes. I
That's what
believe
would
that
assume.
if a proposal, yes, if for whatever reason your proposal is not going through because it's like, 22 megabytes, you can probably break it up into 2 parts and send separately. But don't make it like a gigabyte. Don't make it 150 pages long. Again, just a sequence of events table that you can find on the RFP as well. The questions, deadline to submit questions. If those questions don't get asked at the end of the day, you do have a little bit of time, and that is May 26th. And then we have until June 2nd to answer back to you guys. Here is just a summary of the points, pass and fails categories. And this is the documents that you must submit with your proposal to be deemed responsive. The letter of transmittal, which is all in the appendices section, the campaign contribution disclosure form, the employee health coverage form, and if this is applicable, the governmental conduct act affidavit. Here is Martin's information, his email, his phone number, and his title if you guys have questions or when the time comes to submit your proposal. Okay, so now we're getting into the AMO program overview. We are funded. We have two sources of funding. We are funded by a fee on coal productions. That means that for every ton of coal, mine coal, we get a small fee from that. And most recently, we are also recipients of the bipartisan infrastructure law grant, which allows us to have more money to do more work across the state of New Mexico. The New Mexico Abandoned Mine Program has been safeguarding abandoned mines since 1981. And so far, there are over 15,000 abandoned mine features in the state of New Mexico. So there's a lot of work as it relates to abandoned mines. And so far, the New Mexico AML program has safeguarded over 3,000 mine openings to date. We have three main reclamation priorities, which of course, number one includes the protection of public health, safety, and property from immediate hazards resulting from historic mining practices. That means a hole in the ground, subsidences, things like that, usually as it relates to openings. The second priority is the protection of public health, safety, and general welfare from adverse effects of past mining and processing practices, which do not constitute an extreme danger. That means the reclamation of a coal pile, for example. And the last one, but not least important, is the restoration of lands and waters degraded by adverse effect of past mining activity, practices. Here's an example of some of the sites that we work in, and what you might encounter. There's a picture of a bat, which happened to live in a lot of these abandoned mines that we work around. Just an overview of some of the coal work that we do. We do subsidence, gob reclamation, gob coal washout, and that one's kind of a little bit of a dark photograph, but in the top right-hand corner is reclamation of a gold pile. And then we also do some hard rock reclamation, and that usually entails structures, steel structures to prevent human access into the mines, but allow for bats to still be able to utilize this as habitat. Okay, so now we're going to just go real quick on over the scope of work of the Abandoned Mineland Program. So like we talked about in the RFP a little bit earlier, all offerers must be able to perform the first three sections of the RFP, which include general responsibilities, basic services, and general design services. However, in the appendix form where you are going to be telling us which services are you putting in a proposal for, you can choose from any of the three that are outlined, which is specialized AML services, ecological design services, and photogrammetry and mapping services. You can do one or you can do all three, but you must be able to do general basics and general services. Some of the general responsibilities that are pointed out in the RFP is the fact that, because it says professional engineering services, all work must be performed under New Mexico licensed professional engineering good standing. The same goes for if you are teaming up with a surveyor, it must be a New Mexico licensed surveyor. Of course, all successful offers shall be aware and comply with regulatory requirements connected with the work. That means if we need any permitting or we have any requirements, you guys must comply with any permitting or requirements that that is asked of us. Again, the successful offerer shall initiate, maintain, and supervise all safety precautions and programs concerning the work, and shall prepare and submit health and safety plans for the work tasked. This is usually a health and safety plan during like a construction project, for example. And the basic and general services, it's pretty straightforward. It's mostly AutoCAD work, AutoCAD design work, mine inventory. We might be able to, we might ask, the consultant to go out on a site with us and do site assessment. Again, surveying, it needs to be performed under the New Mexico license surveyor. And you get in ArcGIS, that means mapping, construction observation services, writing daily field reports, etc. It's all outlined in the RFP. And now Megan McDonald, who is an engineer with the Abandoned Island Program, is going to talk about specialized AML engineering services.
Thanks, Yenny. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so this is one of the 3 subcategories that you may choose to submit your proposal for. We have a list of specialized AML services. These are the types of services that are pretty unique to abandoned mine work. These can include inventory, where crews will go out and discover abandoned mine features on the landscape and map them. It can also include geotechnical exploration through drilling and other means that we use to investigate our sites, particularly for subsidence and underground coal fire sites. Safeguarding design, this is all rather specialized, where the consultant would evaluate and design a safeguarding measure to close off a shaft, an adit, or a stope with some of the various methods that we have used in the past. This picture shows an example of a mesh closure that we have done over a large stope. But we're also, of course, always open to new design ideas for safeguarding. Subsidence mitigation is also on the list. In the past few years, we've had a lot of subsidence problems at our abandoned underground coal mines. So this is coming to the forefront of our work. This is especially true in the Gallup area, and then also somewhat in the Raton coalfield area. Underground coal mine fire characterization. In the past few years, we have identified 5 fires in the Gallup area, and there's certainly more to be discovered there. There's also additional ones up in the Farmington area and up near Raton as well. So, some specialized work could involve characterizing these fires, mapping the features, doing thermal mapping and temperature measurement in order to develop construction specifications and safeguarding designs. We include slope stability analysis and recommendations on this list because occasionally we do have some slope stability problems with coal waste piles. I will say that we don't do this all that frequently, but it is on there should we ever need it in the 4-year period that these contracts will be running. Environmental testing and remediation. This could include testing for radioactive elements at mine sites, if we need to test surface or groundwater, especially if we're trying to determine if there's any heavy metal contamination or we're looking at an acid mine drainage issue. Occasionally, we might need some air quality monitoring, although that's not very frequent. And then sometimes we'll ask for groundwater remediation measures. The last one on this list is methane assessments. This is something that's come on our radar recently, where in the coming years, we're going to be looking at ways to assess how much methane these abandoned coal mine sites are giving off, and if there are any methane emission reductions that can happen through engineering controls at these sites. Okay, next slide. So this is just an example of some of our specialized work. Here's an example of a past project, the Allison Subsidence Project in Gallup. It had several components, including addressing large open voids, doing drilling and grouting programs to stabilize underground mine workings and firm up the ground. There's also a drainage design component to keep surface water away from these areas that are prone to subsidence. So this is an example of a coal project that requires specialized services. Next slide, please, Yenny. Thank you. Here's a picture of an underground coal fire out in Gallup. And in the past few years, we've been characterizing these fires. The photo on the left shows some thermal imagery that was taken through the use of drone flights in order to characterize the extent and magnitude of this coal fire, and with the end goal of coming up with mitigation recommendations to protect public health and safety. Part of specialized design is also hard rock safeguarding. As Yenny mentioned previously, our hard rock work right now involves exclusively safeguarding for physical hazards. So a lot of work to close off the mine shaft or the adit. We expect to have our focus on these contracts for coal work in the coming 4 years, but we may on occasion need services for hard rock safeguarding design, especially some of the support that's required for it, such as mapping and LiDAR surveying, that sort of thing, which Yenny will touch on later. Thank you, Yenny. Yenny, I think you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. The next kind of services that the consultant might want to put in is the ecological design services, which includes stormwater drainage, geomorphic reclamation or landforming, stream and ecological restoration. This is mostly done in our coal sites, but we might use these services, specifically the re-veg plans for hard rock designs, or really anywhere where we have a project. But basically, it's stormwater and drainage systems. This may or not be in urban settings. For example, the Madrid project, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And a lot of this work includes low impact development structures. So it's not like hard engineering where you're going to put concrete, structure somewhere. It's mostly structures that blend in with the environment where you're putting them, like Zuni bowls, one rock check dams. Occasionally, we do some stream restoration work in streams that are near abandoned mines, particularly in northern New Mexico. Let's see. So here's some of the work that we can be expected to do in the next 4 years. Again, low impact development, things like rock ditches and jersey barriers, and this is in the town of Madrid, New Mexico. And here's some of the stream restoration work that we do, things like low impact development, and low impact development, the installation of SUNY bowls and one rock check dams and other rock structures within stream channels, and slope areas. And this is a project that is up in Colfax County in within the Vermejo Park Ranch. And then finally, the third and last services that you may put in will be the photogrammetry and mapping services. And this includes, the use of crewed and uncrewed aircraft surveys. So, for example, in Madrid, we did a flight over that was done with a small plane. I think it had like 2 people in it, and that's what we were able to use for our topo surveys. But if any drones are going to be used for the photogrammetry or mapping services, they need to be part of this list, the blue UAS clear drone list, for safety reasons. So any other drones that are made that are not on this list are not going to be allowed to be used for any of our projects. And again, this is just to get topo surveys, point clouds for terrain, high resolution ortho imagery for mapping, thermal imagery like when you saw in the coal fires in Gallup. Here's an example of a topo survey in Boston Hill. So for the upcoming projects, we do have a lot of work of abandoned mines in New Mexico. Like Megan mentioned, we are going to focus mainly on coal projects going forward. But we will have some hard rock projects as they come. So the main projects that we have right now going on and that we foresee happening during the next few years is the Madrid Stormwater and Erosion Control project, which includes an erosion control project, which includes low impact development structures throughout the town to help manage erosion and flooding issues. And it does have a water tank component where we are seeking to install a more updated fire suppression system for the town that is currently not meeting code. And as part of the erosion control and the stormwater project. And then we also have, like Megan mentioned, we have subsidences in the town of Allison, which is near Gallup. And that's very similar to what we're doing in Madrid, a mitigation and stormwater project, which is a project that follows the subsidence issues that we had there. And of course, we have coal fires in Gallup and in the Jones mine, and we're gonna probably seek to mitigate those fires going forward. And then more coal field projects development in Gallup, Raton, Madrid, and northern New Mexico. And of course, photogrammetry and mapping to help develop these projects and any other project that might pop up in the future. I'd like to talk a little bit about the subcontracting. For those, this is not a requirement right now or as part of your submittal, but just if you're gonna put in for a proposal, this is something to keep in mind. In case if you do get selected as part of as a consultant, for any of the services that you put in, you might be required to comply with the federal law for procurement. And we might ask you to submit proof of how you selected your subcontractors. So this is just something to keep in mind. If you are familiar with the 2 CFR 318 through 200, 326, great. If you're not, you might want to get familiar with the federal procurement laws. But like I said, at this point in the proposal, it's not a requirement. You do not need to show us how you selected your subcontractors. But if you do get selected, we might ask you for that. I will have more guidance from our federal overseeing agency, OSMRE, on this, and I will point out the clarification in the Q&A. But just it's something for you guys to keep in mind, that this might be a requirement when we sign a PSA. And again, don't forget to register for the unique entity ID with SAM.gov. I know that in the past, some consultants have been having trouble with getting the renewals in on time, or even the initial application takes a little bit of time. But I think the federal government is getting better. Again, because we are using 100% federal funds, we have to comply with the SAM.gov. Okay, and I think that's it. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Yanni, this is Richard Rauter with AECom. I do have a question on the subcontracting you mentioned. If the prime offer has listed several sub-consultants within their proposal submitted, do those sub-consultants, are they considered approved and not have to go through the selection of sub-consultants by FAR? In other words, to bid it out?
And let me see if I understand your questions. If the sub-consultant is a sub-consultant is a sub-consultant for several primes, is that what you're asking? Is that like a vetting process?
Oh, yeah, let me
or-
rephrase it. I
Yeah.
think it was misunderstood. So if we list a surveyor on our
Oh.
proposal, and we just list one surveyor, then if we're awarded a contract and issued a task order, do we then have to go through reaffirming the surveyor through the FAR, or can we consider, because they're embedded in the proposal, that they're pre-approved for the task order?
So this is what we're trying to figure out right now, and that's where the further guidance comes in from the federal overseeing agency, because in the past that's been the case, but we have received new guidance that you must show us proof if you get a PSA. This is only if you are awarded a contract. You must show us proof how you procure that surveyor, for example. And that you have complied with the federal law. But again, I will get more guidance from the federal government, and this will be part of the Q&A amendment that's gonna be due in June 2nd.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. And
Yeah.
I have one other question. On Appendix C, where we list the additional 3 categories of additional services, does AML have a idea of the procedure you'll go through in awarding contracts for those 3 services? In other words, without getting into numbers, like how many of each category, do you plan to make decisions based upon each category separately, or will you look at them as a whole?
Megan, do you want to
Yeah,
take that?
I can speak to that, Rich. So we do intend to award in each of the categories so that we have enough coverage for the work that we have planned for the 4 years. But if you look at the all the scoring criteria, we're gonna score your proposal as a whole. So just because you don't submit in one area, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that you're gonna have negative points in that area. So it's gonna be as a whole. We really can't say right now the exact number of contracts we plan for each subcategory at this time, though. If you do submit for multiple categories, though, we can, and you're a successful offer, you're awarded a contract, we can use the company for all 3 of those areas, or just one, depending on what we have planned for the work in the coming 4 years.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions regarding scope of work or the proposal itself or the schedule?
Yes, I have a question. My name is Maria Hashemi from Daniel B. Stevens and Associates. And my question is regarding the volume of work and the project listing form in Appendix E. It says that the offers must describe the volume of work previously done by the agency. The agency is specifically the Mining and Minerals Division, or is it also included any other divisions that our company might have worked with?
The agency is EMNRD. So if you, it includes everyone under EMNRD. So it's not just mining and minerals. Mining and minerals is a department within the agency. So EMNRD is the agency.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
And Maria, I'll just add one more comment to that. And that only has to do with active contract work that you have on the books right now. Anything that's already been completed, the contract is expired, the work is passed, you don't have to include on that form.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
Just a follow-up question on that form. So it suggests that if you have a project 75% complete or higher, that it would be counted against you. Typically what we see, yeah, go ahead.
I think it might be opposite. Let me just double check that form, Rich, because that sounds opposite.
It sounds like it's worded opposite what the intent would be.
Right. It's really just, we want to make sure, if you've almost completed all the work, then that shouldn't count against the company. So let me see.
So
Thank you.
It's 5 points if you basically have no work under 75% complete. And then if you do have some that's under 75% complete, we would start subtracting. So we'd go down to 4 points, 3 points, 2, 1 point.
Right. I think the intent though, Marty, is the most points will be deducted if you were less than 75% complete on your contract. Is that correct?
Look again. In the past, it's been a deductive thing.
Yeah. It certainly is a deduction, but I think the way we're wording it is a bit confusing. So
Yeah.
perhaps we'll follow up on this in the Q&A so that we spell this out clearly.
One part of that was worded like you'll get 5 points. Then we go down from there.
Hi, Megan. This is Asad Rizvi with Tierra West. I also wanted to just kind of tie in the record of past performance and how that's going to relate to the volume of work item. If we could clarify that as well.
Sure. Let me just pull this up. Okay, so on record of past performance, we ask you to describe work you've done with past AML programs. It doesn't have to be the New Mexico program. It can be others too. Any government agencies or any private industry, we ask you to describe projects that are relevant, and then have you describe how you controlled costs, how you demonstrated quality of work, and how you demonstrated your ability to meet schedules. We do ask for a client reference for the projects that you describe. Yeah, so this one, the record of past performance is really to get an idea that you have done projects that relate to this work. It does not have to be exactly AML work because this is specialized work. It just has to be relatable. So that's what we ask for when we ask you to describe your past performance.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
So to clarify the volume of work, so if you look at the table for the points, it's got volume of work is worth 5 points. So it's now when I go back down to the description of that, it says 5 points will be awarded to offerers who have no contracts or all contracts are at least 75% complete. And no points will be awarded if they have any project that's less than 75% complete. So it's a 0 or a 5 points. The way I'm reading that.
Yeah, I pulled out the language on the RFP.
Okay.
for everyone to see.
Well, let's, perhaps Marty and Yenny and I, we can take a look at this and just make sure that we have worded this in the way that we intended it to.
Right,
Yeah, we can address that in the Q&A.
Yes.
right. Because normally it's a graduated thing, like you have a certain amount of money that's less than 75%, then you'll get 4 points versus 3 versus 2 or 1. So this one is all or nothing. You either get 0 or you get 5.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we'll take a look at that.
Okay.
Overall, though, it's not a large point deduction or addition.
Right.
Yeah, this is Richard again. I don't think it's opposite of what I intended.
Okay.
So I retract my statement. Thank you.
You know, I'd like to just kind of remind everybody, there were a few people who came in late. And if you did come in late and didn't have a chance to put in your name, title, telephone, and email on the comments so that you are counted as attending this meeting.
So here's the list that I have, sharing my screen now, if people can see it, of the companies that are represented on the chat. So please search out your company's name and just verify it's there.
I
Thank you,
think
Mike.
a question came in as to, are we gonna publish the attendee list? And generally we do that.
Yes.
Oh.
This is part of amendment number 1 with the Q&A, the attendance list.
And there was another question, Yenny, about whether it's necessary to have a New Mexico CRS tax ID, and I don't know the answer to that.
It's on the PSA. At the very end of the contract, it says State of New Mexico Tax and Rev Department. Yeah, it must be 11 digits long. Yeah.
So the answer is yes, you need to be signed up with Tax and Rev.
Is it possible to post the PowerPoint presentation to the AML website?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we will do that. We'll post the attendance list, the PowerPoint, and any Q&A that may come in. Of course, you know, if you guys can think of any questions after this meeting, please send them to Martin Kuziel. His information is in the PowerPoint. And we can even post the PowerPoint right after this meeting on our EMNRD website too, so that you guys can just have a central reference point.
And I'm assuming we'll be able to get the First Amendment out by the end of the week.
Yes, we do have, like I said, the deadline to submit questions. That is your deadline to submit questions to Martin. Is May 26th. And then we have until June 2nd to respond to those questions.
Right, so we'll be doing multiple amendments, I'm assuming, unless we answer every one of them
Yes.
this week.
Yes. Are there any other questions, concerns, comments at this time? Going once. Alrighty, well, if there are no any more questions or any more comments, again, if you have questions that you can, you know, discuss with your team after this meeting, send them to Martin, not to me, not to Megan, not to anyone in the AML program. It must go through the procurement manager, which is Martin Kuziel. His information, again, it's posted in this presentation, and it's on the RFP. Mark your calendars for all the important deadlines. And yeah, thank you for making this meeting, and thank you for your time. I hope that we get some good proposals and yeah, and get some work done in the state of New Mexico.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks.
Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For those of you left, I assume you're putting in your contact info. Otherwise, you need to drop off. Thank you. So Don, Bill, and David, please sign off. Martin, are you back?